Hi, I'm Dawn Damari, and you're listening to another episode of A Teaspoon of Healing, listening and watching now that we're on YouTube. I have a guest with me today, Dr. Paul Zeitz, author. Welcome, Dr. Paul Zeitz. Welcome, doctor. Do you prefer being called doctor? Do you
No, you can
prefer
call
like
me
Paul?
Paul. Please call me
Okay.
Paul.
Some people, I always ask because some people prefer to have the doctor. So, hi, Paul. Thanks
Great to
for
meet you. Great to be here, Don. It's great to be on your show. Thanks.
Thank you for stopping by the show and being a guest. So, your book is called Revolutionary Optimism. And before we talk about that, do you mind describing your background a little bit with the people who are listening or watching?
Sure. Yes. Thank you. I'm a 62-year-old man who has been married for 33 years. I have 5 sons. I have 2 grandchildren. I was trained as a physician and specializing in public health and preventive medicine, and that's what I did for many years. And I became a activist advocate working on social movements and political transformation about 35 years ago. So that's really where I've spent my professional career serving in those spaces. So um, and yeah, that's my journey quickly.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So you were a physician and specialized in public health. I have a master in public health, so I have a little bit
Oh
in
yeah,
common there. I'm a dietitian, not a physician, but
right.
public health is, yeah, that's
Right. So
wonderful.
we learned about the health of the population, right? We looked
Hmm.
at it beyond just the individual.
Yes.
Yeah. So that really had a big effect on me. I was trained at Hopkins, and
Okay.
the people that eradicated smallpox were was the dean of the school and professors. So we were just like taught about how to go to scale with global solutions from the
Hmm.
beginning.
Oh, wonderful. And Johns Hopkins, that's a really good school for public health. So that's great. And yeah, it's definitely focusing on population health, which is very different from, just looking at the individual. So you have a book, Revolutionary Optimism. So what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, so the book is Revolutionary Optimism: 7 Steps for Living as a Love Centered Activist. And it's really like a handbook. And it's the book that I wished I had been given or had access to when I was 15 or 20 or 30 or 40, 50. Even at 60, I would have taken it. And it's really practical, and it's really focused on helping people unlock their own personal power and live and breathe and walk on the path of love in their relationship with themselves and their family and all their relationships. And it's about like healing and self-liberation and that quest of self-fulfillment and self-awakening. And then it bridges into how do you take that energy of your full power being unleashed and unlock your political imagination and build love-centered movements and bring forward collective transformation and collective repair, collective liberation. And so it's a journey that is interrelated, in my view. Like more of us have to heal ourselves in order
Hmm.
for us to achieve a collective healing, which many of us yearn for.
Hmm. No, that's definitely a good point. We all yearn for this collective healing, but you said something very important. We have to heal ourselves first. And
I
so
think
your
it's
book,
not, I don't know
yes.
if it's first. I think it's
Oh,
kind of
okay.
like I kind of think of
Along
it,
with it,
it's
maybe.
like a Mobius. It's interrelated. As we
Okay.
heal ourselves, that empowers us to heal collectively.
Hmm.
It's like inner. I don't know really how to say that any better than it's a dynamic. It's an interrelationship between those two things. Because if we all waited till we were perfectly healed,
True.
we can't wait. We
That's
have to be
true.
acting in the world. Right now is my view.
That's true. And then there's always that saying that healing is not linear, that you can, so it's a lifelong process. So I guess if we waited, then nothing would happen. That's a really good
Yeah,
point.
and I also make the argument that advocacy campaigning, movement building, like taking a stand for something at the collective level, is actually a healing modality. And there's evidence behind that. So I'm just offering that, okay, all the healing modalities people do, therapy, meditation, whatever practices, yoga, those are all great. And, being active in our political life and in our greater community, I think all that counts as well.
And so how does that help people heal? Now some people might ask that. I have some ideas and I'm sure you do, but maybe if you could share how being active in your community, finding a, standing up for what you believe in and being centered in love, how can that help an individual heal?
Well, I think that's great. Great question. I mean, part of the book is trying to figure out, I offer practices and pathways for exploring, like, what matters to you? What is
Mhm.
your soul's purpose? What are you feeling called into? And then how do you want to serve as well? So, like, you might have a history in your own lived experience that brings you into, like, I had this horrible experience in this situation, and I think other people shouldn't have to go through what I went through. So that could be on a medical problem. It could be on, like, for me, for example, I'm a survivor of early childhood sexual violence at the hands of my
Sorry.
father.
I'm
So that
sorry.
was early childhood trauma. So when I figured this, I had a 40-year amnesic barrier, no memory. Then it all came back. And during that time, since I was already doing advocacy, I said, oh, I'm going to commit to doing whatever I can to end that scourge, because I don't think other children should have to go through it. I think it's wrong. I'm very clear about
Absolutely.
that. So
Absolutely.
that commitment, brings me into action mode, and I'm still experimenting. Like, how should I act now? I'm always trying new things to fulfill on that commitment. So like, I feel good about that. It helps me on my personal healing journey that I'm keeping my word. That when I had that, healing breakthrough and I was shattered and had to recreate myself, I made that commitment, and I'm fulfilling on that. So it it helps me heal, and it helps me feel whole.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry for what you went through, but it's very powerful to share that with people. So many people go through things like this and they feel a lot of shame about it, or we feel shame about things that we shouldn't. And we, like you had mentioned, and not collective amnesia, but the amnesia, because you want to block out bad memories. And now wanting to prevent this from happening to other people,
Mm.
that is really powerful. That is very powerful. And so how would you define the term revolutionary optimism? And yeah, let's ask that first. I can.
uh, it's a way of living and connecting with others. It's a way of living on the path of love, where you can bravely unleash your personal power and then unify with others to repair your own life and your own relationships and our world.
Wonderful. And so, why is revolutionary optimism particularly relevant in today's world? There's a lot going on, as we know. And so, why is it so? I know it's definitely relevant, but why would you say it's particularly relevant now?
Yeah, I mean, I myself at times feel overwhelmed and anxious and despairing and hopeless about the state of our country and the broader super crises that we're facing as humanity. And I created revolutionary optimism, actually, as a response to that, as an antidote to that. Because I can, like, go under the covers and pull the blanket over and say, I can't do anything. Nothing I do matters. I have had that thought, and I've had that experience in my body too. It's not an uplifting feeling, right?
Mhm.
So I created revolutionary optimism. I'm actually using the book. I'm living the practices. I'm living as a revolutionary optimist. Optimist. It's very helpful, and it allows me to see all the suffering, all the violence, all the trauma that's going, all the division, the hatred, and still stand for the possibility that we can unify, that we can find our common humanity, that we can choose a different way, a path of love and repair and justice, and humanity can do that. I believe. I don't know when the tipping point will be. That's the mystery
Mhm.
here. But I
Mhm.
believe there's going to be a tipping point, hopefully very soon, where collectively we say it's time to transition into new social, economic, and political systems that are
Mhm.
not extractive, that are not based on caste systems, that really are honoring our interconnectivity and regenerative economics. So we're not always extracting. We can do this. We can. I really believe we can do better.
Me too. I really believe that too. And like you said, the tipping point. Like, when will that be? We don't know, but hopefully it will be soon. It
Yeah,
sounds a little bit scary, at the same time, but if it, you can only go like one way for so long. Change is scary,
yeah, I
but
think we're at that crossroads, honestly. I mean, the
yeah.
state of the situation is dire, in my view.
Mhm.
And I don't know how much worse it has to get, before we are ready. Like, I'm ready, and I'm offering this as an offering for others to help them be ready to go. I think a lot of people are ready. There's 8 billion people on the planet right now, roughly. So I don't know if it's 4.01 billion people, or maybe it's 1.4 billion people, and then we tip. I'm not
Mhm.
sure when that all will happen. But I hope it's soon, because the climate emergency, for example,
So,
is uncontrolled right
mhm.
now. CO2 emissions are still going up every year. Like, all the responses that we hear the politicians talking about are not working. And
That's
so
true.
we really have to take our own responsibility for that and come up with a new pathway of climate transformation to regenerate our ecosystems and our environment so that we can survive as a species. If
Mhm.
we don't do that, then we're not going to be around. But we have that choice to make right now.
Absolutely, and we owe it to our children, and people who have grandchildren. They're the ones that are going to inherit it, and we owe it to them. I agree with you. So now the book. Oh, sorry, don't mean to interrupt you if you had a point.
No, I mean, I think that point you make about, children. I tell a story in the beginning of the book about this woman, Gloria, who had young children, and she was looking at them and thinking about it. And she then got inspired to start taking some small action with her local church. And then, she was successful, and then she started taking more. I want to just say that every action counts. And the idea of grandchildren, also, I will say for myself, when I had my grandchildren, 4 and 2 years old now,
Oh,
that really was like I was imagining them. I have a practice about imagining future generations. So I imagined them at 80, which is around 2100. I thought, oh my God, what kind of world are they? Am I leaving them? So it gave
hmm,
me a sense of urgency to do whatever I could. But also, then I did a practice where they're looking back at us now, me and all of us, saying, and you can play with this. It's like a game, an imagination game. You imagine future generations, like, looking back at us saying, thank you for all you did. Thanks for the mobilization. Thanks for the transformation. Thanks for the healing and the repair. Because look, we're still here, and we can survive, and we can be joyful and peaceful. So anyway, that's a practice that helps me, buoys me when I'm feeling down.
I really like that. I really like that, envisioning an optimistic vision for the future where they're thanking you, where your grandchildren are thanking you for everything we've done. So this is just a call to get some stuff done, so we can
Exactly.
so that can be realized.
Right.
So, in your book, there are 7 steps outlined for living as a love-centered activist. Do you mind just providing a quick overview of these steps? And we can go through a couple of them in more detail.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So this each step has a set of RXs, prescriptions or practices. It has stories, real stories of real people. Some of my own stories are in there too. I share vulnerably in the book. And then there's like collective wisdom. There's research and analysis from what the state of understanding is for the concepts that I'm putting forward. So the first few steps of the book are really about the journey of our self liberation. It starts with it's go time, meaning that we can start right away taking love centered action. Actually, most people already are. Anything that you're doing to take care of yourself counts. Anything that you're doing to take care of your children or parents or family members or community members, all that counts. So recognizing you're already on the path, that's part of it. And then unlocking your full power, figuring out how you want to serve, figuring out what your soul's purpose is, uh, taming that inner dragon, that voice that creates stories that says you're not good enough, or that what you're doing doesn't matter,
Mhm.
and that you're never going to contribute anything of significance. No, that's not true. That's like what I call the inner dragon. So learning how to manage that and tame that is a big part of step two. Step three is about you. It's called unified consciousness. It's about making sure that we can access unity consciousness or collective consciousness. I believe everyone's had that experience in some way during their life, but I offer it as a way of, a few practices, breathing practices, chanting practices, but like learning how to access collective consciousness and then deploying it when you need it, in depending on the circumstances of your life. So that's step three. Step four is the heart of the book. It's called peace crafting, and that's really about like you and me right now, Dawn, like the space between us, like how we're relating, and it's about any relationship between me and or you and the other. And it
Mhm.
could also apply to groups and societies, even the peace crafting concept. It's a cycle that's living in my brain now. I have to like remind myself to be a listening friend, embrace multiple perspectives, use love speech, and build trust with others. That's the heart of peace crafting. Then the last three steps are focused on unlocking political imagination, imagineering, and then building love centered movements for transformation. We're in this together. That's the thing that sometimes my inner dragon says to me, "You're all alone. What you do won't matter." And then the truth is, I'm not alone. I'm in this with everyone. And I'm in this with you and your listeners, and we're all in this together, actually. So that's so living into that movement building approach. Step six is a big one. It's called Sparking Peaceful Revolutions. It's about direct action. It's about peaceful resistance. And that can be from your desk, from your home, or it can be like in the community or out on the streets, or however you choose to serve. It also will help you understand what's going on, because there's a lot of mobilization happening right now.
Mhm.
And then the last step is unifying within so that you can really live your truth. Like you have a sense of your purpose. And now the step seven is really about like acting on that fully. And that's a journey to get there. And then our collective unifying, like, breaking down the silos and the walls between us. So that's a quick overview. I do recommend people do it by themselves. It's a lot of work, but also with groups because I think a book club or a church group or a family group, any kind of group of people going through the experience together, I think that would be fun and deepen relationships.
That's wonderful. And thanks for the overview of the 7 steps. And there's a couple steps I wanted to talk about. One of them that you had mentioned, the inner dragon, and I forgot which step. Maybe it was step 2.
Hmm.
It was to tame this. So how can people do that? I know I have that. I'm sure all of us do. It's that
Yeah.
voice that tells us you can't do this, or you're not good enough. This and that. We all go through that. So how do we tame that inner dragon?
Yeah, we all have it. It's part of our survival mechanism. It's the part of the brain that protects us. It keeps us
Mhm.
safe. It's the left side of our brain, and or sorry, left side of our brains over here, um, and it controls our sympathetic nervous system, our response to everything around us, and so it also we get triggered
Mhm.
and we respond to those triggers and we have experiences in our life. So something happening now triggers us based on something that happened in the past. And
Mhm.
so there's practices in the book about, understanding how triggers work and managing our own triggers. And like I'm 100% responsible for managing all of my triggers. So there's some simple tools to manage those and then understanding how the triggering works within you. Like there's flight, freeze, and appease. Those are trauma responses. So flight is you run. I do that sometimes. Freeze, you get parallels. Sometimes you fight.
Mhm.
You want to duke it out with someone, either hopefully verbally only. And then the one that I learned about later in life and really, kind of like really had tricked me for decades was the appease response, where I would appease my response, my triggered response would be, go along to get along and just,
Mhm.
not speak my truth, not, inhibit myself and limit myself. So it just unpacks some of those things so that people can explore what's blocking them or and the dragon is something that lives within us and we tame it. We don't want we want to be able to respond to threats So we
Hmm.
need those responses. And at the same time, we have to learn, we have practices in the book, and there's many other practices that you can learn to override it with with our new brain, the neocortex, the higher functioning part of our brain. And we can choose to activate that and live into that, our highest self. So that's the invitation to explore that. And it says, make a commitment to doing that inner work because it's inner work.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And that's really important. And I like how you mentioned you don't want to get rid of it. We want to tame it, but it needs to be there because there could be threats, actual threats that we do need to respond to. And
Yeah.
that's why it's there. But
And also we
the
have to be
triggers.
compassionate with ourselves, right? Because I
Mhm.
get triggered and I go into a state, I forget that I'm supposed to use love speech and I'm barking, you know, and
Me too.
my dragon's like talking through my mouth, and so it's like we're human. It's like we
Hmm.
have to just be easy on ourselves too. And now when this happens with my wife and I, we've been married a long time, eventually we can laugh about it. When you catch the dragon, and you can end up laughing at it, and that makes it lose its power too.
I like that. You can catch it and then talk about it, laugh at it, and it has less power. Those are really good tips. And, you had definitely brought up some good points about the triggers and how we're responsible for managing that because we can respond to something based on a previous trigger. It might not have anything to do with what's actually going on at that
Exactly.
moment.
Well
It's really
said.
important.
Yes.
Now, you had mentioned another step that was interesting was step 4, I believe, which is tapping into the unity consciousness. Do you
No,
mind
that's
talking a
step
little bit
three.
about? Oh, step 3. Okay, what? Yes, step 3.
Yeah. Yeah. So as I mentioned quickly, I believe it's very important for people. I've had to learn this myself, that I can access what I call unified consciousness, which is a state of awareness of that we're all interconnected. It can be called unity consciousness, or it can be related to religious groups, call it Jesus consciousness. It's not. There's many different terms for it, but it's a state of awareness of our interconnectivity. And I think everyone's had it, like at a funeral or at a birth of a child. You have this sense of an altered state.
Hmm.
We're all in this together, kind of thing. And or we can do it with nature. Sometimes we get awed by nature, and we see that we're small in the context of a bigger reality. There's many ways to access this. So I really want to offer that this is something that people have already experienced, and you can go to the gym and practice it, and you can learn how to access it and be able to then develop that, build that muscle, if you will, and then learn how to practice, experiment, play with deploying it, deploying that different awareness. So it's a good practice. Like when I get triggered and I'm like responding, like the dragon is like, trying to survive. And I'm like, wait a second, we're all interconnected. Calm down, like, okay, go back to rest, And so it helps me calm myself down even. And then I've been in situations. I share a story in the book where I went to the March for Palestine in Washington, D.C. last November. I was raised as a Jew, and I'm interspiritual now, but I was there in solidarity and I was learning. But I got
Yes.
triggered. Had a panic attack. I thought,
Mm.
all
Oh.
the Hollywood movies of the Islamic terrorists, started
Hmm.
flashing, and it
Hmm.
like triggered me. And then I was like, okay, Paul, calm down. And I did a breathing practice and a chant practice that's in the book. And I was like able to open my eyes and go, wow, look at the beauty of the diversity of humanity right before me. Look at the power of all these people being able to express their truth in the heart of Washington, D.C., where freedom of speech is a protected right. And it was safe. And it was like, we're honored to be able to live in that kind of environment. That doesn't happen in most places around the world. Now, I
Hmm.
didn't agree with everything they said, and I still was getting triggered by it, but I
Yeah.
was able to like be present and experience it also. And that was, I was like, thank God I didn't run, because that was
Yeah.
what my reflex was going to do. So
That
that
was
that that
understandable.
ability to tap into unified consciousness at will, saved that experience for me.
That's very powerful, especially with the background and with everything going on, and that can be triggering. There are scary things that we can think about, and it's great that you were able to tap into that and then still be present there. And oh, it's really amazing. And that actually leads me to my next question. So, being a revolutionary optimist and being love centered and unified, consciousness centered in this world right now, there's so many injustices, war, and there's so much division and other issues. So, how can we do this? Because it just sounds really hard right now.
Well, it's exactly what you said. It is hard. I'm not saying revolution because living the journey of a love-centered activist and living as a revolutionary optimist. I don't think it's easy. I think it's hard work, and I think we're in this together. And I'm not doing this alone. I'm connecting with people, and the more and more I connect with people about it, it's like everyone's craving the same thing, that same connection, that same zone of possibility, that same possible future positivity. And I have to encounter a lot of skepticism and negativity and all that comes at me, but I'm like a trim tab. I stand firm for love. And I feel like that's the best way for me to respond to this situation that we're in. I have this sense and this experience that we can do better. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
see all the potential of all of us, and I feel us rising. I'm on the streets now with the climate activists. I'm on the streets now with the Palestinian Liberation Movement, with racial equity folks, with reproductive rights folks. People feel, the trembling of a peaceful revolution.
Mm-hmm.
We have the violent revolutions already happening, right?
True.
We have the
Yes.
street violence, we have the interpersonal violence, we have pandemics of sexual violence, we have pandemics of personal violence, we have the mass incarceration, we have gun violence. I mean, we have all that in the United States. Plus, we're
Mm-hmm.
waging wars around the world. Plus,
Mm-hmm.
we have the largest military industrial complex ever in human history. I think there's like 660 bases or something. So, what I'm saying is like that's already happening, folks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying as a response, we need to counter peaceful revolutions. And the thing is that a lot of us that have this sense this possibility think it's too big to take on, but then because we're in our little silos or we're staying, small, if we unlock and the more I talk about it, the more other people talk about it, then we can make it happen. It's a big we moment. It's not me. It's not about me. It's about we.
And you mentioned the peaceful revolution. So, how would you define that? I know you talked a little bit about it, and you made the comparison with violent revolutions, which we see. So, how would you define a peaceful revolution?
Yeah, so I think as people take a stand for things that they care about, like they want to take a stand on any of those issues that are facing us, I think it's important to see the interrelationship between all the issues. There are interrelationships, and we look for those, by design. Um, and from the big thing about the Sparking Peaceful Revolution step is focusing on peaceful resistance, which Martin Luther King used. He called it nonviolent resistance. He inherited it from the Gandhian experience and from prior, political social movements. And now there's a lot of evidence that peaceful resistance is the most effective means for actual transformation, social, political transformation. Because violent actions by those that want to see change happen just leads to a law and order counter response and shuts
Mm-hmm.
down free speech and freedom of protest. So I'm a strong advocate and champion of peaceful resistance, and included in that is what is called non-cooperation. So you don't have to be the ones that are at the encampments or marching on the streets. No, you could be doing it from your home based on what you purchase. You can be doing it from your office based on what actions you take, in the workplace. You can provide support, emotional support, housing, food for those that are out on the front line, and spiritual support as well. Because it is not easy; it's very stressful. But it requires like 50% of the population. You need about 5% of the population on the streets, and then you need another 45% of the population or so supportive. Ready to go and
Mm-hmm.
doing their part in making something happen. That's how the civil rights movement happened. There was collective action, and there was a wide network that supported that.
That's right. And so, and this is possible, this peaceful revolution. Do you believe this is possible in our country or perhaps another country in this world
Yeah, no,
today?
I'm calling for global peaceful revolutions. I mean, the decade of 2010 to 2020 was the largest number of mobilizations or peaceful protests
Hmm.
ever in human history.
Wow.
And even in the United States, like we all had that experience after George Floyd was murdered in
Hmm.
2020. That was
Yeah.
the largest
Huge day.
mobilization on racial equity ever in human history. And it happened in the United States mainly by white people and black
Hmm.
people, but mobile people of all races, including mostly white people, mobilized in response to that. And I know my black friends really appreciated that, by the way. Um, and then the women's marches and other big movements. Oh, by the way, the George Floyd thing, the racial equity thing, that went global. I mean,
Hmm.
they were tearing down statues of King Leopold, who perpetrated the slave trade in the Congo from Belgium. They were
Yeah.
tearing his statue down all over Belgium.
Oh,
So that
wow.
was like, so that had a global ripple. Also in London, England and Belgium were some of the leading slave traders. So
Yeah.
these phenomena that I'm talking about, these systems of oppression, caste systems, are global in nature. So we need global transformation, global revolutions, peaceful revolutions. Yeah, and it's happening. More and more countries are separating from the Commonwealth of the British Crown. That whole
That's true.
system that was all their wealth is based on the slave trade.
Yeah. And that's really sad. That's really, and it's so much of our history. If you think about it in, you know, our history and then people that, my ancestors are what? I'm half Italian. You go over to Europe and then people think it's silly when Americans talk like this. But anyways, I'm half because they just think you're American, right? But we're
Right.
kind of obsessed with ancestry. So I'm half
Right.
Italian, and then I think Scotch Irish and
Wow.
Polish, whatever else it is. But you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about your history, and so much of it, sadly, is rooted in oppressing people from the global South, other people, whether it's
Right.
slavery or just
Italian Americans
oppression.
were highly oppressed when they first arrived here. They were
Italians, yes, they
scapegoated
were.
and
Yes, they were.
abused terribly when the waves
Yes,
of immigration happened here.
it's true, and a lot of people don't know that, and, a lot of Italians, they actually didn't pass on the language to so my grandparents, I don't believe they passed on the language. If my dad's watching, he might be able to confirm this, but they didn't pass on the language to some of their
Mm.
kids because they wanted to really make sure that their kids really integrated into America because they like you had said, they were not treated well,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and, you know, it's, so much of it is
But we
rooted
had
in
that
that.
opportunity to heal, though, right? Healing is
Yes.
possible. Isabel Wilkerson really defined caste systems as oppressing one group of people over the other, and they shape shift throughout history and in different geographies. And like in the U.S., it was white people over blacks and indigenous people, or what
Yeah.
men over women is another form of caste.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is, and the good news from my view, is that you can heal from caste. It's not like it's forever.
Absolutely. This can be done probably with some of the help from some of the tips in your book as well.
Yeah, and there's models like South Africa after the apartheid
Yeah.
oppression systems collapsed, they launched a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and I had the opportunity to work with Arch Tutu back in the day, and he led that Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It basically prevented the country from decompressing into a civil war, which was definitely possible at that time in the early 90s. And, they didn't do as much as everyone had hoped. They didn't really get to reparations, they didn't really get to economic equality. And, there's still a lot of problems in South Africa, but it was a leap forward from where they were. And that's what we're planting seeds for those moments where things can come together and we can leap forward.
Absolutely. Now, when you had mentioned unifying and unity consciousness, of course, there's quite a few people that disagree with some of the things that we're talking about today. They may have different points of view. And so I noticed in your bio you have a movement called the Unify Movement and putting the love at the center of that. So how can we try to bridge gaps with people that don't agree, I guess, or that we don't agree with it? Maybe it's not possible, but I feel like a lot of the division is some of the problem. Like we could work together somehow.
Yeah, thank you for that question. The heart of the book is peace crafting, which is step 4, and it really is the bridge between the work that we do on ourselves and how we then operate in the world. And I think what I have been working on and what I'm working to do is being a good listening friend and really listening to other people, like in creating a safe space where other people can share their truth, whatever it is, and
Hmm.
I can listen and learn and explore. And even if I get triggered, that's also a learning opportunity for
Yes.
me to just go, what happened that triggered me? And I become an investigator of that. And then the second part of it is really like embracing multiple perspectives. That's a big one because I find that people that are in this polarized state, they're convinced that they're 100% right.
Hmm.
And I was just like, I'm like, I don't even, I have multiple perspectives myself within me.
Hmm.
I could have
Hmm.
that debate within me, and I actually think that there's 8 billion people on the planet. I think there's probably 8 billion perspectives because everyone
Probably.
has their own DNA and everyone has their own life experience and da 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 da. So, like, I think it's a really important practice to recognize and accept that there are multiple perspectives and to be embracing of that and open to that. If you get through that hurdle, then it's like, how do you respond, even if you disagree or even
Hmm.
if you get triggered? And it's called use love speech. So, whatever you're saying to another person, and this is hard work and it's a lifelong practice, is that it's uplifting to them. It's using them as their highest self. It's counter shaming. It's being mindful not to use any language that could be shaming.
Hmm.
So love speech is an ongoing thing. And then the last thing is trust, building trust. I share a trustometer, which, because my experience in my parts of my life and what I've observed in other people is that trust is seen as like an on and off switch. Like I
Hmm.
trust you or I don't. And that
Yeah.
can be like for an organization too. I trust that organization or I don't trust that one. And what
Hmm.
I had to learn in my adult life and my advocacy, particularly here in the swamp of Washington, D.C., is that, it could be too narrowing to turn everyone have an on off switch. So by allowing trust to go up or down, meaning that you can rebuild trust over time with anyone or anything, any organization, it keeps your ecosystem larger and it allows for healing and repair and allows for human foibles and human failure, which we all experience. So that's the fourth part of peace crafting. So now that 4-part thing, like like it's a circle. It's like spins in my head, so then I'm in circumstances and I'm like, okay, don't you listen, Paul, you don't have to speak. Why am I talking? That's one of the practices. Wait, why am I talking? So it's a practice to be a listening friend. On and on the practices go.
Well, thank you for that. Just learning to listen and regaining trust, that you can regain trust in people or in organizations specifically.
And
And
it's okay to
very
disagree.
cool.
I'm not trying
Yes,
to
it's
get to the
good.
place where we
Yeah,
all agree.
that's for
It's
sure.
actually
We will not.
embracing disagreement and the
Hmm.
beauty and the diversity of our thoughts and our ideas. Like I don't think anyone has any entity has all the answers. We need all hands on deck
That's true.
to solve our collective challenges.
Yes, and it's very ambitious. It's very ambitious, but it's really needed, and I'm glad you're doing that because it's super important. So great.
And I'm not alone. There's a
Well, that's
national
good.
movement in the United States, a social cohesion movement, a bridging movement. Braver Angels, the Listening First Project. I mean, these
Oh,
things are
okay.
all over the country now of trying to bring people together to do collective problem solving because that's what really people want. They want practical solutions to the challenges that we're facing.
Absolutely. And I didn't realize that I'll have to check out some of these other organizations. What were the names of them again?
One is called Braver Angels,
Okay, Braver
and they
Angels.
bring people together from across the political spectrum, and they have like a set of practices where they practice listening, practicing understanding where the other person's coming from,
Hmm.
and then they do practices where they're doing joint problem solving, and they end
Nice.
up getting like a wide range of agreement. Another group is called the Listening First Project. There's another group called More Perfect Union.
Oh,
They're
I've
creating
heard of them.
social events across the country, bringing people
Hmm.
together just to talk about our civic life. To create a conversation. It's not political; it's apolitical, in fact.
I
But
like
it's
that.
like, what do we want our country to be? They ask questions like that.
And I've heard of More Perfect Union,
Yeah.
and I like that. And you'd mentioned it's apolitical. So then it kind of, I think people will relax a little bit and then be more open to it if they hear that it's not political.
Yeah, I mean, I think that politics for me is like a sport. It's like a competition of ideas. So if you think
Uh-huh.
about it like your favorite sport, whether that's baseball, basketball, hockey, football, whatever your sport, it's like a game. So
Yeah.
politics is a competition of ideas. And it's like, let's be on the court. Let's be in the game. Let's
Hmm.
be championing our ideas for how we want to create our reality
Hmm. Absolutely.
or recreate it.
Absolutely. Well, that's really cool. And thanks for giving me the names of those organizations. I'll check them out for sure.
Pleasure.
And now, where can people, well, first I'll ask, where can they buy your book?
So I would like to ask people to go to www.revolutionaryoptimism.com, and that will take you to a link that you can buy the book through Amazon. And then if you put your Amazon order number into the system, you can get a free Changemakers Companion Kit to help
Oh,
people really experience revolutionary optimism. And you'll also get access to the journal and workbook, which is the complementary book for groups that has like group discussion questions for all the practices that are in the book and that I mentioned on this interview. So revolutionaryoptimism.com is the first step. Please go there and please let me know how it's going. I'd love to support you. I'd love to learn how people are finding the book and doing the practices. Yeah. So then, if you want to get involved in advocacy and activism, I have another website called Unified Movements, uh, and that is where I'm sharing what I'm up to. I have a podcast, and I have featured movements, like 25 of the movements that are operating in our country and that are bringing forward the kind of peaceful revolutions that I've been talking about here. So and those are just pathways to explore. Those are pathways of engagement for people that want to really take their engagement to another level. Or reach out to me and I'll help you navigate that.
and people can reach you through one of those websites, and
Yeah,
I'm
through
assuming social media as well.
yeah, exactly. Or my personal website is drpaulzeitz.org. And through that one, you can email me directly.
Oh, okay. So drpaulzeitz.org, and I'll put these in the show notes,
Yeah,
and you
thank
can
you.
email directly there. Great. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for being a guest on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was really enlightening,
Oh, I
and
should have told
I
you
like
that
that.
revolutionary optimism is contagious.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. And there's no
Okay, put me
cure and there's no vaccine. So once you or your listeners have it, you can't be stopped. So
Well, that's
beware.
wonderful. Well, that's wonderful. And I appreciate this conversation because I have been wanting to bring guests on to talk a little bit about how we can get to collective healings. I definitely have a lot of guests we talk about, personal healing, whether it's physical or emotional, but to get to this kind of societal healing
Hmm.
and how we can get there. So I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Paul. And I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thanks. Peace.